Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Please support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you. My name is Emily, and until last week, I believed my husband Ryan was the quiet type, the man who smiled through every awkward moment and never raised his voice, no matter how sharp my jokes became. I used to tell friends that Ryan was bulletproof. It turns out he was simply keeping score in silence. It all began at my sister Claire's birthday dinner. A long table filled with wine glasses, soft fairy lights, and that familiar tension only families can create. Ryan had driven us there, made sure Claire's flowers were perfect, and even ironed my dress while I got ready. He looked so effortlessly polished that I almost felt irritated. When dessert arrived, the conversation drifted toward relationships. Claire's fiancé bragged about surprising her with a spa weekend. Someone asked Ryan what the most romantic thing he had ever done was. He gave a small smile and said, "I make coffee every morning. That counts, right?" Everyone laughed, and for some reason, I felt the urge to turn it into a show. I lifted my glass and said, "Oh, please. Ryan's idea of romance is unloading the dishwasher without me reminding him." Laughter spread around the table. It seemed harmless. I told myself it was just a simple joke. But then I saw his eyes, calm and patient, with that sharp glint people get right before lightning strikes. He gently set his fork down, wiped his mouth with his napkin, and said, "That's fair, Em, but if we're sharing, your idea of romance is posting our fights on Instagram stories before we even finish having them." The entire table went silent. Even the waiter froze mid-pour. My throat tightened, heat rushing to my face. Ryan didn't smirk or lean back like someone delivering a punchline. He simply sat there, composed, staring ahead. I tried to laugh it off. "Okay, ouch," I said with a forced smile, but the moment was already broken. Claire coughed into her napkin. Her fiancé suddenly became very interested in his water glass. The rest of the evening faded into polite whispers and clinking silverware. On the drive home, silence filled the car. Streetlights flashed across the windshield, breaking the quiet into awkward pieces. I wanted to speak, to say anything, but every word sounded defensive in my mind. When we reached the driveway, Ryan turned off the engine and finally spoke. "Do you ever get tired of making me the punchline?" His voice wasn't angry. It was calm, almost worn out. That tone frightened me more than shouting ever could. I started to reply, but he gently raised a hand, as if he had practiced this moment. "I don't mind your humor," he said, "but lately it feels like every joke is about how I'm not enough." I opened my mouth to deny it, but memories rushed in. Comments at barbecues, double meanings in front of friends, the small digs I thought were cute. I realized how often I had chipped away at him, hiding insecurity behind humor. "I didn't mean to," I said quietly. He nodded. "I know. That's the worst part." We went inside. I sat on the edge of the couch while he removed his jacket, hung it neatly, and walked upstairs. No slammed doors, no sighs, just soft footsteps. That calm hurt more than anger ever could. I spent the night replaying the dinner in my head. The laughter, the silence, the way his eyes stayed steady while mine searched for an escape. Somewhere between pride and guilt, I realized how public humiliation can't be undone with private apologies. The next morning, Ryan made coffee like always. 2 cups, one for him, one for me. He slid mine across the counter and said, "I meant what I said last night. I'm not angry. I'm just done being your favorite story." Something inside me cracked. For years, I had mistaken his patience for indifference when it was really quiet endurance. I wanted to tell him he was more than enough, that I admired his calm strength. Instead, I stared at the rising steam and said, "You're right. I've been cruel while pretending to be funny." He didn't respond. He picked up his mug and left for work. The door closed softly behind him, leaving the kitchen too quiet, too real. That day, I couldn't focus. Every email blurred, Every sound echoed. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a message, half afraid of one. None came. By evening, guilt turned into fear. What if that dinner had changed something forever? What if silence became his new language? The next 2 days passed in an uneasy quiet. Ryan wasn't cold. He was polite, careful, almost too kind. He still asked if I wanted coffee, still folded the blanket I left on the couch, but it felt like living with someone who had emotionally moved out. The lack of tension felt heavier than any argument. On the third evening, I decided to make things right. I cooked his favorite meal, roast chicken with garlic butter, and opened the bottle of Merlot we had been saving. Anymore. I watched her shrink into herself, as if the years we shared were folding inward, collapsing into the silence around us. Her breathing was uneven, and for a moment, I wondered if I had gone too far. But this wasn't punishment. It was clarity, seeing things as they were, without excuses or sugarcoating. Claire, I said, my voice firmer now, I can't live this half-life anymore. I can't stay beside someone who isn't fully here, who doesn't want to be here. Her hands trembled in her lap. James, I didn't mean... Didn't mean what? I interrupted gently. To hurt me? To erase us without saying a word? Because that's what's happened. This fear on your face, it's the result of months of pretending, of loving someone else while I stayed loyal, hopeful, patient. I can't undo that. And I won't pretend it didn't happen either. Her eyes filled, not with anger, not yet, but with the quiet, exposed guilt of someone who has been caught. I didn't soften. I let her sit with it, with the weight of what she had done, with the hollow pause where love used to live. This was the moment I had imagined in private, rehearsed over and over in my mind. Not for revenge, not for drama, for honesty. I want you to understand, I continued, leaning back slightly and allowing the silence to stretch between us. Tonight, on our anniversary, I wanted a kiss from my wife, from the person I trusted more than anyone, but I can't share my lips with someone who has been sharing herself with someone else in my bed, in my life, in my home. That's not love, Claire. That's betrayal. Her breath caught. James, please. No, I said firmly. Not yet. You need to hear this. I've spent months building up to this night in my head, planning conversations that never happened, holding back tears, swallowing the hurt. But it ends tonight. This moment is the end of pretending. I can't kiss you. I can't act like we're fine. We're not fine. She looked at me, truly looked at me, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in a year, maybe longer. In her eyes, I saw it, a flicker of recognition, a memory of the love we once had, now tangled in shame and fear. But recognition alone isn't enough to rebuild something after a long, slow erosion of trust. I think you need to leave, she said finally, barely above a whisper. I didn't move right away. I let her words settle. For months I had imagined this scene, and the reality was quieter, less dramatic, but far more powerful. I had known for a long time that love cannot survive on memory and hope alone. It needs presence, commitment, honesty. And that had stopped. She had stopped. I nodded slowly. You're right. Her hand twitched toward mine, a hesitant attempt to reconnect. I didn't take it, not to punish her, but because I couldn't. My heart, my pride, my sense of self-worth required distance now. I packed a small bag, nothing dramatic, just the essentials, and I felt an unexpected calm. Not relief, but clarity. I was no longer standing in the shadow of someone else's choices. I was stepping into the light of my own. She didn't follow. She didn't call my name. She didn't beg. And that was the point. This wasn't a fight. It was a reckoning. A quiet acknowledgement that the life we had built together had fractured without noise. Now we were each responsible for what came next. As I drove away, the city lights blurred past, and I realized grief doesn't always shout. It doesn't need chaos. It can be calm and reflective and still leave a mark on your chest that reminds you of what you've lost. But that mark also reminds you of what remains: your dignity, your sense of self, your future. I thought about our first date, the way she smiled across the cafe table and made me feel seen. I remembered the laughter that once filled our kitchen, the late-night talks, the warmth of her hand in mine. Those memories weren't erased. They were mine to carry. But they were no longer enough to sustain us. Not when reality had shifted so quietly, so decisively. By the time I pulled into my friend Lucas's driveway, the weight had eased slightly, replaced by a strange, bittersweet peace. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't slammed doors or demanded apologies. I had simply faced the truth, stepped away from the illusion, and allowed life to move forward. Lying on his couch that night, staring at the ceiling, I understood something important. Love isn't just passion or shared history. It's presence. It's honesty. It's mutual respect. Without those, even the strongest bonds fade quietly, almost without notice. And sometimes leaving, not in anger but in clarity, is the only way to protect what remains of yourself. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know if she would reach out or if forgiveness would ever come fully. But I knew this: I had chosen myself. I had chosen clarity over denial, truth over pretense, and peace over silent suffering. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely again, even if the air was still tinged with loss.